Hey, what's going on, guys? I don't know if you guys just saw me. I did a live stream with Owen Cook, and I want to do one with Rollo because, as content creators and as just like human beings, and Rollo being a father and being a husband, just the dealing with the reality of just what's happened today. It's crazy. I wasn't going to make anything about this, but I've had numerous people reach out. And then as soon as we went live on Instagram, the amount of people that jumped on was absolutely crazy to me because this is kind of like the ethos of where the whole country's like heart is in this place. And I want to say first, the majority of people on the left have stated that they think this is disgusting as well. There have been a few bad apples on Twitter and Instagram and places like that, people dancing and laughing and talking about he got what he deserved and all this kind of stuff. And those people like, listen, hey man, what's on the internet is forever. For the rest of your life, people are going to know you said that. So you're going to have to deal with that for the rest of your life. So I wanted to bring Rollo on here because he's also involved in this. Our whole discussion about men falling behind and men suffering is part of this political discussion that Charlie Kirk was having. And we didn't agree with everything that the guy said, but the fact that you're having this discussion is important. And the other thing is, censorship. Like this is the ultimate censorship, right? You want to take somebody off the board is the ultimate form of censorship. So I think there's just so many angles to this. But first thing I want to do is because I'm man, well, you got me on Twitter, bro, and it's a dark, scary place.
I know.
Well, let me say one other thing. Let me say one other thing. And by the time this video comes out, or when you guys are watching this, if you are around your children or loved ones, don't watch the video, please, of the up close video of him getting shot. Please don't. I know it's tempting. I know everybody wants to do it. I would highly recommend you just stay away from that. If you're in a public area, you're around your kids, just don't watch it. Give it a couple of weeks or give it a couple of days before. And if you've ever dealt with some kind of serious trauma, I don't recommend it. I've never seen anything so in 4K, so documented by hundreds of people, something like this happened where it's very clear, and just very, very gruesome. So, that's what I want to say about that. Anyway, go ahead, man.
Yeah,
what were your
I
thoughts
was gonna
initially?
say, yeah, stay away from the Twitter stuff. At least give it a day or two, because right now it's just like it's everywhere. Like I was just coming out of the gym when you texted me and Tristan about this, and I was like, really? So I had to go look it up, and of course, I'm a Twitter animal. You guys aren't quite as
Yeah.
plugged into Twitter as I am, but it's absolutely everywhere. And of course, the thing is when my first thought on this, I'll give you sort of my sort of political philosophical angle to this here in a second, because I don't usually do politics. That's not my wheelhouse. There's other people that do it better than me and have been doing it longer than me. The only time I ever covered politics is when it some way crosses over in intersectional dynamics. Then it's fair game, but I'm never just going to sit here and tell you about liberals and Democrats and rightists and leftists, whatever. But in this case, we kind of have to cover that. One of the things I notice about Twitter is that you have to be very, very careful, like what you say or what you type out within the first, say, like half hour of a flashpoint event, which is what this is. Like when Trump was shot, that was a flashpoint event. This is most definitely a flashpoint event. And so when you do that, you got to make sure that you have all the facts and all the data first, because people were saying he had been killed. People were saying he wasn't killed. People were saying he was still had a pulse. They didn't. People were jumping the gun. Some people weren't jumping the gun. And we were having a conversation sort of amongst ourselves and just trying to like track down like what was accurate and what wasn't. And so it's really important, I think, to just sort of like step back when stuff like this happens before you start, opining about anything. But the reason why I want to talk to you about this is because we're in a public sphere. We are public figures. That's what we would be called if it came down to like we were in the midst of like a slander or a libel suit or a defamation suit. We would be called public. You and I both would be called public figures. And that's kind of where we're at right now. So public figures literally have a target on them right now, as of not like we didn't before, but like as of today. And my first thought, and I think probably your first thought as well, was Myron Gaines, because Myron has done exactly this.
Yeah, Myron's been
He's
doing
gone
this.
to the University of South
Yeah.
Carolina and some other places as well, North Carolina, somewhere like that. And who was on some sort of college tour. And it seems like I know Steven Crowder has done something very similar to
Yes.
this.
I think
And
Steven Crowder kind of started this whole
yeah,
thing as far as
yeah,
conservatives
go
going off
go
and doing this.
challenge them, like get in people's grill, right? Get in people's like go out to where the people are. Myron has been doing this literally in Brickell, has been sitting down there and puts up like sort of this little tent or something like that and takes questions from the audience and stuff and just like puts himself on the spot. And I think we've kind of crossed a Rubicon now, because the last time I saw Charlie Kirk was when he was at Oxford University taking questions from Oxford students I'm not sure if it was him who was on the Jubilee show where they put him in the hot seat and they surround him by like liberal,
I think they
children.
did that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
so, and
I'm
he
almost
had a
positive. Let me
good,
look that up.
yeah, he had a really good answer for like I remember just seeing the clips of that and him having some really good answers and some like engaging stuff. Like he knows his shit. So I'm not, it's no secret. I've never been like a really big fan of Charlie Kirk, only because I've only ever really challenged him on his sort of take on intersexual dynamics in Turning Point USA. I'm not a big fan of that either, only simply because they're like entertaining Nala Fit and some like pretty questionable characters, especially for their, their Women's Day part of TPUSA. But that said, this sort of is a wake-up call to people like you, people like me, people like Myron, people like Steven Crowder, anybody who is going out. I know I was watching Tim Pool today. Tim was talking about how he had plans to go and do some sort of speaking tour, some sort of I don't know, engagement or something like that at a college, and now he has basically canceled those plans as a result of this. So if the point was to silence the opposition, mission accomplished. Basically, that's what's been going on.
Well, you talking about the conservatives?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to silence conservative voices for sure.
Yeah, I think he's a martyr now. I think a lot of people. By the way, going back to what you just said before, let's go look at it right now. This is the video you're talking about. Got 31 million views. You see this? Can 25 liberal college students outsmart one conservative?
Yeah. He was on point. Yeah.
That's 31 million views. So my whole thing is like, we're going to over time kind of figure out. I think a lot of the things that maybe people were curious about, maybe you're a two or a 3 out of 10 curious about Charlie Kirk. Owen Cook was kind of the person who introduced me to him. Mm-hmm. Now maybe you're an 8 or a 9 out of 10. And now maybe what happens is, and this is for, whoever shot him, wished him dead, or wished him silenced. This message is for you. Now all of a sudden, people are going to go back and watch that Jubilee discussion or some of the other discussions he had, and they're going to listen to some of the things that he said, and they're going to question. They'll be like, yo, they shot him for this? Yo, why'd they shoot him? Yo, I'm supposed to believe what he said isn't true, but why'd you shoot him then? You shot him? If what he said, like, let me explain something to you. I'm not super worried about people saying, hey, you don't need to drink water to live. You want to know why? Because if you don't drink water, you're going to die. It's like one of these things where I don't need to debate you. Eventually, what was the old Sun Tzu saying? If you see your enemy ship burning, don't go rescue him. It's like, if you say enough stupid shit, you're just going to burn. I don't really have to worry that much about dealing with you. And in this situation, why, if he was saying things that were so adamantly not true, then you don't need to shoot him. Does that make sense? If he's saying things that aren't true, people only trip about things that bother them. If he's saying things that aren't true, you don't really have to worry about him. It's not that big of a deal, because eventually, and I think this is kind of what the internet has done. Like I mentioned this before, the biases that conservatives have, we've known about them for 500 years. Conservatives have been conservative for 500 years. So like, what they believe in. And is there a sprinkle of like misogyny or racism? Maybe. But my point is, you're not discovering them in 2025. You always knew about them. What I think the internet has done is exposed a lot of what progressives and liberals believe and brought their light to the face, where it's like, what is voter ID? Oh, it's actually to try to get illegal aliens to vote in political elections. Okay, now I see that. It's like, okay, what did Title IX do? It actually caused men to fall behind significantly. The internet, what it's done, it doesn't really expose conservatives, because conservatives were exposed hundreds of years ago. It's exposing liberals. And because of that, you see fewer and fewer people on that side of the aisle willing to debate. I mean, for whatever you want to say about Destiny, he's willing to debate, right? Most people on that side of the aisle don't want to have a discussion. And so now, instead of having the discussion, which this guy could have done, whoever shot him, could have gone up there, they would have given him a microphone, he would have had his platform in front of millions of people, and instead he had to shoot him. Instead of saying why you don't agree with him when it comes to trans rights, or which ethnic group commits the most crime, or whatever controversial thing he said, instead of having that discussion with him, you needed to shoot him. So now, if I'm on the fence, now I'm asking, yo, you needed to shoot him? What was he saying? Oh, let me look at some of the things Charlie Kirk was saying. Oh, I'm not sure about this. Oh, but you had to shoot him? Let me do a little bit more research now. So I don't think they silenced the right at all. I think they've turned this man into a martyr.
What I'm saying is, like, so I've mentioned this in terms of intersexual dynamics several times, where I talk about the difference between the language of empiricism and the language of emotionalism. And really what we've gotten down to right now, I think really probably since like the mid 60s, is we've prioritized the language of emotionalism, and we've prioritized emotionalism above all other considerations right now. That's how you get things like Fields Before Reels, right? That's how you get, living my truth instead of whatever the truth is, right? So you're looking at two different perspectives. One of them is an empirical perspective that is based in reality, and the other one is, how do I feel about this? And right now, when you cannot counter an empirical argument, when you don't have a counter argument to what Charlie Kirk is saying, what these children on Jubilee are saying about whatever the issue is, whether it's trans rights, whether it's whatever the hell he's talking about, when he goes into nuts and bolts and was like, I will give him this. The guy was a consummate statistician. And so he knew all these facts, like he could recall them at a moment's notice, didn't need a cell phone, didn't need perplexity, simply just had them available in his brain because that's just what his interests were and that's what he was about. And when you're debating a guy like that, or when you disagree with a guy like that, and it feels wrong. It feels like I have been taught the most of my life that to embrace my emotions, to embrace my feminine side, to express myself emotionally, to put feels before reals. When you encounter a guy such as Charlie Kirk, or yourself, or me, because we have been involved in this kind of conversation too, although within our own niche, right? So when we're talking on Access Vegas, or I'm talking on even on Dr. Phil or something like that, I'm having to explain certain concepts that are just natural to me, but it feels wrong to people like Dr. Phil or Michaela Peterson or the kids who are on Jubilee or whoever is encountering somebody who can't come up with a counter argument that in any way challenges that empirical take from that guy. And so what happens is, once you run out of gas, once you run out of counter arguments using empirical language, you default to an emotional reframe and try to reframe that the conversation or whatever else in like, oh, who hurt you, right? Like, have you ever been in love? Do you know any actual women? How is your mom and dad? What was your family life like? And trying to sort of reframe these things into an emotional sense, because they can't win an empirical argument. They can only win in an emotional argument. And what happens is, when taken to its logical extreme, that's when you get an assassination attempt, because they cannot win that argument with Charlie Kirk. So what do? They try to silence him permanently. And that's exactly what.
I mean, they silence it permanently, but the thing about the internet is now it's just like when, it doesn't forget. Like every point he ever made, is going to come back. And then also, the people who really, just there seems to be this complete, I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but it's like, are there people who are, you like to say this, you're not trans, you're just gay and boring.
You're just gay and boring here. You want attention.
I'm not going to sit here and make a proclamation about whether transitioning is a mental illness. But what I am saying is that it could be, or it could be some of the time. And we refuse to look at it like it could ever be a mental illness. I think that's a really big detriment here. Like, meaning there's no chance that there's a correlation between someone shooting up a school who happens to be trans, that their transness had something to do with it. We don't even want to discuss whether or not that's a possibility. Charlie Kirk is going to say, well, no, it is. It's just a mental illness. And that's the reason why people believe that. Right. So I'm not going to argue for or against, because that's not what I want to make this video about. But I just think that having that discussion about this mental illness situation, not even willing to address whether or not that could have something to do with it. Like, I'm just going to say this, man, and I really didn't want to make this video about this, but like, I like my wiener. The idea of cutting it off, that's fucking mental illness, bro. I just don't see how it is. Even if I'm a homosexual man, which I'm not, I just don't understand that. I think there's like, for instance, there's people out there that want to cut their leg off. There's an actual disorder for it, but they admit it's a disorder. Like, wanting to cut your wiener off, like, bro, like the idea that okay, I'm not here trying to make a proclamation that it's a mental illness or isn't, but the idea that you can't even investigate whether or not it might be, because you sure as fuck can't get any federal funding to try to investigate whether or not it's a mental illness. But it sure does seem like I'm very aware of my own wiener. I'm very aware of it. The idea of cutting it off is very clearly to me antithetical to what I want to do with my life. right?
Mm.
I'm not saying people aren't different than me, but the idea that it couldn't be a mental illness is crazy to me. So now he has this discussion, and now it tends to be people from that side of the aisle, the extreme left, LBGT part of the left, that are
Mm.
committing a lot of these crimes. Not all of them. I know we obviously there's African Americans committing crimes, white men committing crimes. You're talking about someone who's like less than 1% of the population, which is trans people committing
Very
this
much
many
less,
crimes.
fraction
Yeah,
of
very
1%.
much less than 1%, a fraction of 1% committing this many crimes. This is no hatred. I'm not trying to be hateful. I'm asking, can we at least ask the question? Can we at least ask the question? And that's what he was doing. He's trying to ask the question. And if you want to know why he was shot, it was more so for that, I think, than anything else.
Yeah, well, I was going to say is like we've actually had this discussion on Access Vegas when we were still at Sticky Paws. The trans community is a fraction of 1%. It is like at the point where it's could be a rounding error. That's how few there are. And the thing is, the fact that we would make policy or we'd make some sort of general proclamation for the greater whole of society based on the feelings of a fraction of 1% is ludicrous. And I don't think that we need to be making any special dispensation for that. In fact, the thing that gets me is one of the reasons, anyways, why I think that we're not allowed to have those conversations. We're not allowed to bring up certain topics or certain aspects of that community or homosexuality or hell, even white people, black people, Latino people, Asian people. There are certain things that we're not allowed to say. Like, for instance, like, why is it that we capitalize black and not white when we're like report, like the AP, like the way we write certain, articles and stuff like that. AP says that the Associated Press says this is how we're supposed to do it. Why? We can't even ask the question why. Like, we've been on YouTube for how long now, and we can say every swear word we want, but there's other words we're not allowed to. Why is it that we can't say certain things, right? We can't even discuss what we're supposed to be talking about without triggering the algorithm that's going to listen in on us and marginalize us or ratio us for something like that. Why is that? We're not even allowed to ask those questions. And the reason we're not is once again, because there is no discussion between an empirical reason as to why we can have that discussion and an emotional reason. That's why we have trigger warnings. That's why we have, hey, watch out, these things might upset you. Well, there's a lot. I'll tell you what was very upsetting for me was watching Charlie Kirk die today. That was pretty upsetting, right? That was pretty much, if there was ever a need for a trigger warning, that was it right there. But the thing is we're not allowed to have those conversations. And the reason we're not is because we're worried about feelings before we're worried about real world statistics and numbers and data and the stuff that you and I talk about on a semi-weekly basis when we're on the show or when we're on our own respective shows or something like that. And so when I start talking about like the language of empiricism versus the language of emotionalism, it's not just for intersexual dynamics, it's for conversations about anything right now. So for instance, one of the uncomfortable facts that you're never going to, in fact, we'll probably get ratioed for me saying this, but if you choose to chop this out, that's fine. But the fact is that if trans people are 6 times more likely to be autistic than anything else. Scientifically, statistically proven. I'll show you the studies. Claire Lehman was the one who made me watch
that's absolutely factual. Yeah, that's absolutely factual. The problem is now, because you said that, Rollo, what you're saying, what everyone hears is trans people are bad, and here's the proof of their badness, which is their autism. Okay. Right. Now, you may be watching this and think trans people are bad. You may be watching this and see other things. My point is, we just all have, like you talk about emotionalism, we have to separate our opinion from fact. What you stated was a fact. You didn't state it, let's go burn all the trans people. You didn't say that. And so I think that's where the confusion comes. And us even having this discussion, we'll get ratioed on YouTube. The idea of us having this discussion on TikTok is hilarious. The idea that TikTok would even allow something like this, like having a discussion about this, is preposterous. Again, I just asked the question, what if there could be a correlation? I have my own personal opinions. I'm not going to express them here because I like having a business. But I'm just asking the question. And so you see the difficulties from people that do that. And I'm going to say something else. What happened to him is terrible, and I feel nothing, I want to pray for him and his family. Additionally, guys like Charlie Kirk and even other controversial content creators on the right and the left, they kind of took some bullets for us, Rollo, because you and I are not that. You and I are pretty moderate. And the things that we can say, like, I don't know that I would have been able to say them before, but then I see I'll just say John Zerka. Like the fact that they can get away with saying shit like that for as long as they have, and then like they don't die. Andrew Tate's another example. Like that to me, it's like, do I agree or disagree? I just kind of know I'm less likely to get canceled if the bar has been pushed that far. So to them, I kind of owe a debt of gratitude because they've sort of paved the way in a lot of cases for us. And in a lot of cases for you, you were having some of the early discussions about intersexual dynamics, which paved the way for other people. And they took the torch, and then they grew huge accounts and blew up. And this is the same situation with Charlie Kirk. I think what you might see is a lot more of Charlie Kirk's message after he's been assassinated. I think that ratio content, that bullshit that happens, and again, if you guys want to rank it, TikTok is by far the most liberal. Anything that has to do with men suffering or it just pander to women, you will go super viral on TikTok. And then I'll put Instagram kind of here in the middle. And YouTube is not conservative, but YouTube doesn't give you credit for pandering. This is the reason why like some of these, like Justin Baldoni and Chris GQ Perry don't do well on YouTube, because they don't give you what's it called? Because they don't run ads to the same level. Their best customers pay to not see ads. The reason why YouTube doesn't care about you pandering to women to the same level that TikTok and Instagram does. So you'll notice like a lot of our content it's still ratio, but it's less ratioed on YouTube than it is. And a lot of these really liberal, progressive content creators don't do as well on YouTube as they do on other platforms. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's where we are now. And like I said before,
are you going to do like, my next question is this, and I actually had something to read from Rob Henderson here, because this is what he said about Charlie Kirk. He said, Rob Henderson's I guess you would call him an evolutionary psychologist. He said, exactly 2 weeks ago, I met with Charlie Kirk, flew out to his studio in Phoenix. Turning Point USA had a whole compound with 6 buildings out there. I noticed the building with the main studio where Charlie Kirk records his show was one of 2 buildings that were unmarked. His assistant explained that it was for security reasons. I met with multiple members of TP USA and was impressed with how young and energetic they were. They were well organized and motivated, and were clearly inspired by Charlie and his willingness to speak with anyone and everyone. He is one of the original inspirations for the debate me bro meme. He is, because he would literally debate anyone. From seeing him on various podcasts, he struck me as thoughtful guy, but I didn't know what kind of interview to expect. The 1.5 hour long discussion with Charlie went extremely well. He was gracious, curious, quick on his feet, and asked probing questions. Right away, I understood why he developed the following he had. He goes on, I was just interested in the whole thing about the security situation that they had already set up at TP USA for this, so that there was like sort of a dummy studio. So if anybody was going to go in and try to attack him, they might go to, they got
wow. Okay. I didn't realize that, though, where they
in
said
the right one.
Studio.
And I'm like, so at some point, like they were so concerned with an event like this, that's what they were doing. That they felt that was necessary. And so I'm wondering if, like, so going forward, obviously they've made a martyr out of Charlie Kirk. So like, even you just saying right now, like, it will probably make his material up until this point, his content up to this point, that much more popular. I have a feeling people are going to start quoting him quite a bit more in the future, probably in the next election of some sorts. And like I said, I was never really a big fan of Charlie Kirk. Like you said, I'm like, you and I are probably a little bit more moderate than a lot of people. Like, I take things on a by issue basis rather than like, okay, I'm just a liberal, I'm a conservative, whatever. The only time I've ever had like any conflict with Charlie was when he was talking about intersexual dynamics, and usually that was like after like TP USA.
Yeah, well, a lot of the trad cons.
I probably would have agreed with them on a lot of other stuff.
Just so for those of you who aren't familiar with our content, trad cons who've been married for a long time, and like, I'm not talking about Rollo because he's not a trad con. Trad cons who've been married for a long time don't understand dating in 2025 at all, and they keep trying to espouse their opinion. And I'm even like, listen, love you, Patrick Bet David. I'm sorry, you told Sauce to shut up. Adam Sosnick was correct, and you weren't. I'm sorry. And if you'd like me to come on your show and show you the data, Adam Sosnick was correct. The problem is when Matt Walsh and Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro and Patrick Bet David come out there and they start trying to espouse, you don't need a prenup, get married, marriage is the answer. And then you have an actual divorce attorney like James Sexton come out and say, hold on just a bit. Why can't we ask a few more questions? It's, again, no offense. I think these guys are geniuses. I think they're incredible businessmen, incredible content creators. Please please leave this to the professionals. Stop trying to tell us about dating in 2025. I'm sorry, you don't understand how much things have changed. So please respectfully listen to the experts when it comes to this. And you guys aren't one of them because you haven't been on a first date with a woman in 10, 20 years. So I think that's the difference. And at least in the situation with Rollo, you're dealing with 10, 12 girls every week. You see, and then by proxy, how they deal with me. I'm still out here in these streets at 47, right?
Right.
I can tell you a lot more about it. So like that's where it comes from.
So you and I both have our respective groups as well. So we're working with men who are in the sexual marketplace right now. You tend to deal with younger guys. I deal with older guys, but I think we run the gamut between the two of us pretty well, and we understand firsthand knowledge from the people that we're dealing with, helping them sort of rebuild their lives or just like build them in the first place. And then of course we do our shows, we do our respective shows together and everything else. It's never been about politics. I don't think I can count on the fingers of one hand like how many times we've done politics, and one of those was when we did the live show during the election for last year. That was the only memorable time I can think that we've actually talked about politics whatsoever. But like, I think a lot of people think that just because you and I are quote unquote red pill content creators or whatever, and you don't even really, espouse too much of that to begin with. But the thing is like when we're talking about stuff like this, I think what happens is like people automatically lump us in with the political because so many people on the political right of the spectrum have adopted quote unquote the red pill as some sort of moniker for themselves, and they've appropriated it, in my estimate, not accurately. But the thing is, we get run in with that. So we're by default lumped in with the rest of these guys. So now going forward, I got to watch my back, right? I'm going to be walking through Las Vegas airport and people are going to go, "Hey, Rollo, can you sign my book? Can I talk to you for a quick second or something like that?" I'm going to be like, "Is this guy going to knife me?"
Yeah.
So
I think it's different for me because you know when Charlie Kirk keeps quoting all those crime statistics that he quotes, I grew up in the middle of those crime statistics, so I expect to get shot every night. Like there was a point when I was living in East Dallas where it wasn't a single month where I didn't see like some kind of shooting or hear a shooting off in the distance or see a drive by. So like I don't see it that way, but I totally understand where you're coming from.
Well, just here in Vegas, we just had those two like podcaster guys,
two streamers shoot each other,
shot each other in front of the block.
That's mental illness, bro. And like that's just like it's what we're gonna when. I had someone ask me this before. What are we going to look back in 100 years and be like, what did we get the most wrong? And I'll say the thing we got the most wrong is not understanding mental illness. I think that's the number one thing. By the way, that guy who killed the Ukrainian girl on the light rail in North Carolina, he needs to go to jail. All these arguments, the mayor and that the mayor of the city, horrible what she said. It's like, we need to just worry about the mental illness and he's also a victim. Please shut up. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. If a mentally ill person or a drug inhibited or a drunk person kills a member of my family, they can get the help they need in jail, but they still need to go to jail. I think we need to understand that. I had a discussion with Jasmine Jafar about this, about the death penalty. And I was like, I don't know that anyone deserves to die, but I know some people who need to die. Do you understand the difference? It's like, do you deserve to die? Well, I mean, we can pass legislation on that, but if you're putting your hands on my mother, you need to die. There's a difference. Does that make sense? Do you deserve to die? Is the world going to be a better place because we put you to death and make a statement and let the world know? We can debate that. If you're in my neighborhood and you're threatening the lives of my children and my family, I don't know if you deserve to die, but you need to die. That's what happens because you're not going to do anything to my family. And so I think that's where the
mental illness is always the dismissal. That's all it always is. Like whenever a guy commits suicide, whenever there's a violent act, whenever a guy does usually it's like male issues. Like, well, we need to address male mental health. Okay, great. How are we going to do that? Tell me what we're going to do. Show me the programs that you're initiating. Show me the groups you're forming. Tell me what we're going to. Nothing. It's always, well, we need to address men's mental health. Okay, you just did. Now what are we going to do about it? When are we going to take action? When is the rubber hit the road, right? And there's never anything about it. Because, and whether it's some guy killing this guy killing the girl on the subway and everything else, or if it's a guy who offs himself, or if it's a kid that goes and takes a gun to school and shoots up the school, it's always going to go back to that. We're going to talk about we need to address men's mental health. It's like, and then And we've been talking about this for forever, but we don't do anything about it. And the reason we don't is because it's an easy dismissal. All we have to do is say,
Yeah.
mental health, here, mental health card, done. Okay, on to the next discussion. They never want to address it. They never want to say anything. They never want, like you and I have talked about like how to do like male therapy more than I've heard professionals ever talk about
Yeah.
it. When you're talking about men don't need therapy. They need a performance coach. They need a guy to help them in the gym. They need a guy who's going to help them, help them along in some way, rather than sitting on on a fainting couch somewhere and talking about their feelings in their childhood. It's better to get off your ass and go and do something about it. And this has been sort of my, I don't know, debate or my argument du jour for the last like 2 or 3 weeks, which is like, what are we actually doing? And I would argue that you and I do more for men's mental health, and you and I do more to help men like in an actual, like substantial, like tactile way than anyone else that I know of. But we're the ones that get run up the flagpole for it every time we go public with it.
Yeah, let me qualify that real quick. If you're a man who's suffering from severe PTSD, you have some kind of head trauma, you're dealing with schizophrenia or some sort of dissociative disease or something
Clinical
like that.
Autism. Yes.
I'm not claiming I can help you. That's not, we're not talking about all men. Those men who are outside 1 standard deviation or 2 standard deviations with mental health, you need to go see a professional. I want to make sure I'm clear about that. You're having thoughts of suicidal ideation, things like that. Go see a mental health professional. We're not talking about that.
We're not suicide prevention coaches or anything like that.
Yeah. What I'm talking about is the normally mentally healthy men who are left behind by society because of education, because of economic opportunity, and because of dating. Those of you who've been left behind and feel a sense of melancholy or depression, or just this feeling of like, I don't belong, or I don't fit in, or nobody wants me. For you guys, yes, Rollo and I have done more for those guys' mental health than modern therapy has. I will fucking debate anyone on that. I told you to go throw a football. I told you to go talk to a stranger. I told you to get in the gym. I told you the books to read. I told you to rescue an animal. Those are the actual solutions. I'm not talking about clinical depression. I'm not talking about bipolar disorder. That's outside of my purview. I'm talking about those guys inside of the standard deviation with sort of normal mental health that are dealing with some level of depression because the world has left them behind. That's who I'm here for. With those men, I am an expert. I am an expert with that group of men. But for them, I think we do help those men. But also, I would just want to say, if you're dealing with some like serious trauma, then that's something different. You've been assaulted or something like that. That's something you may need to go see therapy for. For the rest of you guys, a lot of times it's just a bench press max. That's what I do a lot.
Squat rack. Yeah, I also want to point out that like in the introduction of my 5th book of Player's Handbook, I make it clear in there, like if you are suffering from like clinical diagnose autism, this book is in no way going to help you clear that up. Or if you do a one-on-one with me I make everybody agree to my policies before I do so. And then one of those articles in the policies is that if I feel at any time during our discussion that you would be better off talking to like somebody who is a licensed therapist, a licensed clinician, then I'm going to refer you to them.
Yeah, for sure. Just, main points, we've been talking about this all day, and like, I know there's a lot of other people that you guys can listen to. I know right now Myron and Bilzerian are on IG Live talking about this. Bilzerian was the first person I heard say that he had passed. So he had talked to someone in the family and said that Charlie Kirk had passed away. Just remember, guys, this is a person with a children. This is a person with a spouse. Just regardless of what you think about him politically, remember that's the person you're dealing with. Have empathy also for people who don't agree with you. Right now, there are people like there's this welling of anger for a lot of you that's like everyone on the left is evil and try to cancel me. That's not true. I have conversations with people on the left all the time, and you want to know something? They think the LBGT shit is crazy as well. They do. They think voter ID is fucking stupid. Like no voter ID. When I talk to them privately, they agree with a lot of these things. It's just their political party has gone so far off the rails. And by the way, because of their extreme nature, the extreme result of that was electing a guy who'd filed for 2 bankruptcies and fucked a porn star while his wife was pregnant. They elected him president, and I voted for him. Just want to make sure we're clear on that. I voted for him as well. But that's the reason. So because they were extreme, our extreme measure was to get someone like Trump. And so that's the world that we are in now. But we still need to be, guys, you have to remember this, right? When it comes to Canada, when it comes to Britain, when it comes to Australia, like the other large English speaking liberal democracies that are out
First
there,
world
they're
countries.
horribly, horribly handcuffed with censorship legislation. Horribly. In Canada, you can freeze people's bank accounts if they don't agree with the government. In the UK, if someone says something that is pro manosphere or anything that seems anything like red pill content, you can put them in jail. Stop the
Mm-hmm.
recording if you don't believe me and look up all the people that are put in jail for supposed hate speech. That's what
Mm-hmm.
all that propaganda about the show Adolescence was about. Okay. You see people in Australia. I had friends that were in Australia, citizens of the United States not allowed to leave the country because of COVID mandates. The freedoms that we have in the United States were the last bastion of it. That's why I went and joined the military, to serve and protect the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This is the last place that that kind of freedom exists. Dubai is a beautiful place. Love Dubai. Say something bad about Dubai and Dubai, watch what happens. They arrest you. The rest of the world isn't like this. Go ahead. Publicly criticize Vladimir Putin in Russia. Watch what happens to you. This is the last free liberal democracy where you can tell the president to go F himself and go to work the next day. Does that make sense? You can do that. You can still do that in the United States of America. We need to keep things that way. There are people who want me dead. There are people who lie about me on the internet all the time, and I don't even want them canceled. That's how much I believe in this level of freedom of speech. I don't even want them canceled. So I just think that's something we have to understand. Freedom of speech is not good speech. Freedom of speech is not just about good speech. Freedom of speech is also stupid speech. It's the guy that you kind of like, but he starts talking about the earth is flat. Okay, I didn't understand the earth is flat, right? That's freedom of speech as well. When people say stupid things, like I wouldn't know how dumb AOC is unless I listened to her, what a victim mentality she has, unless I was allowed to listen to her. So we have to allow for freedom of speech. And you'll notice, this is why I go with my original hypothesis. The left has been exposed because of the internet. The right is not exposed because the right has been the right. Since the inception of this nation, the right has been the right. The conservatives have been the conservatives. The liberals are finally kind of being exposed for some of the underhanded things that they're doing. Not saying conservatives haven't done underhanded things as well. I'm just like, what my point is, they were not being exposed because we've known about it forever. And so now what's happened is because of this exposing, you'll see the people on the left don't want to debate anymore. They don't want to debate. You want to see somebody get humiliated? Humiliated. Have them debate me on like voter ID. I will humiliate them. There's no possible way for a liberal to stand up and say having no voter ID makes sense. It makes sense in Norway. It makes sense in Sweden. It makes sense in Finland. It makes sense in France. It makes sense in all these other liberal democracies. But for some reason, we can't do it in the United States because it's racist. Come on, stop. So that I think what's happened is the internet has exposed stupidity like that. And so because of that, that's why I think you've seen the left run away and hide from debate and then become more extreme.
I so want to see you on that Jubilee show now.
Oh, I'd love to do this. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. When I first heard it, I was like, that can't be true. You can't show ID. If you show your ID in San Francisco during a political election, they say, put that ID away, put it down. They wouldn't even look at your ID if you gave it to them. That's crazy, bro. There's only one reason for this. It's not to disenfranchise people. It's so that illegal immigrants can vote. How do you not see this? Like that's odd. It's so felons and illegal immigrants can vote. That is the answer. You can talk up whatever storm you want. Chuck Schumer literally said he intended on getting illegal immigrants the right to vote. It's out of the bag now. And so anyway, we're way off topic here. My point is when the Socratic debate. And how do we get to Socratic debate? We get it by having people on opposite sides having a dispassionate discussion. And because we couldn't have that, someone got shot today. Because we couldn't have that. Because we can't do things like that. And so I think that's where we are. And then the last thing I want to say, and I'll let you close here, Rollo, is, and I said this with Owen, the truest sign of masculinity is the willingness to die for your tribe. And regardless of what you thought about Charlie Kirk, he had a tribe. They were Americans or conservatives or whatever his tribe was. He was willing to die for that tribe, regardless of what you think of him. That's the ultimate show of masculinity. It's not body count. It's not how much money you have. It's not even the legacy you leave behind. That's really not masculinity. Those things are laudable in other ways, but masculinity is willing to go downstairs with the shotgun when somebody breaks into your house to protect your wife and child. That's what masculinity is. It's storming Normandy Beach. That's what masculinity is. And so from that standpoint, what he did was laudable. He died for what he believed in. I sat there and we talked about Malcolm X or Martin Luther King, and people were offended. How can you possibly relate Charlie Kirk to Malcolm X or Martin Luther King? And it was like, well, he died for what he believed in. That's how I'll do it. You didn't die for what you believe in, and I guarantee you, you wouldn't die for what you believe in if you had the choice to do so. I promise you would. Anyway, Rollo, and the last thing you want to say?
I was just going to say, I think going forward, we're definitely going to have to think about these things before we go and do, like, well, before Myron goes and does the next, college tour or something. I'm not saying he won't do it. He will, but I know it's going to end up being in the back of his head. Like, are we going to get to the point where we have to create like a dummy studio? So there's a 50-50 chance that we wouldn't be in the studio when shit went down.
Yeah.
I agree with what you said 100%. I think just going forward, this is going to have a cooling effect on a lot of, I mean, if you want to talk about like, silencing the opposition, or like, there's no greater way of ratioing your sort of ideological opponents than with a bullet. So
yeah. I got news for you haters.
Yeah.
I got news for you haters. Whatever you think about Myron, he's got that thing on him. I'm telling you right now, Myron is packing 24/7. Myron's packing in the studio. Myron's packing when we go to Chipotle. You want to come up and try to do that shit to Myron, it's going to be real quick.
Yes.
Shout out to like all these other people that are out there. If you come to Myron, after Myron, you better not miss. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you and I both live in Las Vegas, and so we're not exactly in the safest place in the world either. Sure. But more so than other areas, I'm sure.
I gotta be honest with you, Rollo. Nobody comes up to me in person and disagrees with me about shit. Ever. Nobody. Yeah. And partially it's because the people who disagree with me, part of their whole ethos is to hide and be anonymous and to like throw fadeaway insults. Right. And that's what, when you go off and you do what Myron or Charlie Kirk does, you can't, it's no fadeaway. That's I'm out here. That's my name. This is my chest. My heart is here. You can shoot me. I'm here. I'm really here. You can conduct violence against me. I can't hide. This is all being filmed. It's live streamed. I'm here. That's, again, and these other people, the ones who insult me online or insult any of us online, notice how they're hiding. They're always the private accounts or their bot accounts or something. It's just crazy shit like that.
First name, bunch of numbers.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of numbers, man. And I just ask yourself, why do you have to be anonymous to say this stuff? Like, why? And the reason is, it's because you're probably not right. Because what you're saying is probably based in emotionalism and not reality. This is a little bit off topic. Chris Williamson posted something today about younger women wanting to date older men and older men wanting to date younger women. And it was just stats. He had no commentary. It was just statistics. And in the comments, it says, no, Chris, you're wrong. And I'm like, yo, Chris didn't even have an opinion. He just said stats. And you said he was wrong. When I propose dispassionate statistics about divorce, testosterone, whatever, you insult me. That's crazy. You think whenever I talk about the IFS, the survey or the GSS survey talking about women who cheated in a relationship had 230% more sexual partners than women who didn't? It's like, who hurt you? It's like, that was a statistic, bro. You're telling me I'm wrong when I'm giving you a statistic. I didn't even give you an interpretation. That's how bad it's got. You can't even listen to objective facts without getting angry.
I've been saying this forever. It's like, you cannot tell people facts, data, stats without telling them how to feel about it. Because if you don't, they will hate you for it, or they'll infer whatever you're like, just by you presenting those stats, they will presume that you're either on their team or against their team.
Yes. That's exactly right. And Charlie Kirk, whatever you want to say about him, he had stats to back up a lot of the stuff that he said. He was good about that. And I don't have to agree with everything he says. I'm not going to Charlie Kirk for advice on how to date in 2025. But I might listen to him on some other things. And I've also learned to be enough to have enough tolerance to know that people in glass houses should not throw stones. So when somebody says something I disagree with, I don't go after them. Not even Sadia Khan. I don't go after them personally, right? Because someday, Rollo, you and I are going to fuck up and they're going to come after us. Right.
Oh, I've been there. I was there in 2023. Exactly. It's not that long ago.
Exactly. So someday they're going to come after us, which is why I try not to, I try to stay out of that, try to keep things dispassionate. I really do. Like I said before, a human being died today. He died because he said what he believed, and then he got shot for it. And one other thing, apparently at this point, the assailant is still at large. That video of the man they had on his knees, apparently that wasn't the shooter, according to USA Today and according to Utah State, that was not the actual assailant. Just like the whole Robert Jewell thing happened back in 96 with the Atlanta bombing. So you got to make sure, you don't want to get that wrong. Anyway, man, any other things?
No, that's it, man.
Okay, awesome. Just wanted to share our thoughts on this.
So I think this is a flashpoint event. I think this is going to, a lot of people are saying, I mean, I hate to go Mike Sartain on you, but I
Yeah.
hope we're not at the point where like nobody cares. You know, I hope some
Yeah.
people will actually care about this.
Yeah, no, I've said this before. Like, what the saddest part about this is that in 4 or 5 weeks, nobody will talk about this, and
Yeah.
it's one of the most screwed up things because nobody cares. We have such a short attention span. All you want to be is entertained, and when you look at some of the headlines, you're just being entertained. I'm not here to try to entertain you today.
Mhm.
What I would like for some of you who are dealing with this, and like a lot of us are processing it, because it was this was a real. If you saw that close up video of him getting shot, this is something you have to process for a while. That's gonna stay with me for a long time, maybe forever. Okay. And what I wanted to do is give you some of you guys like some space to process this idea of like what happened and what it means. But like, don't come out of this with anger. Don't. That's not what he would want for you. And don't be like the people who shot him. Be better.
Mm,
Be better.
right.
Sound good?
Yep.
All
Sounds
right, man.
good.
I'll talk to you
All
this
right,
week,
brother.
brother.
All right. See you.
Take care.